I don't think he's being rebellious.
This is what he has to do.
I think it's wonderful.
I love the music.
Well, they're a little wild. I'm not shocked.
Drugs, censorship, wild hair, the mystique of heavy metal rockers shattered by those that really know, their moms.
If you raise your children to love their mama, they can't be all bad.
Heavy metal moms.
I want to be sedated.
On the next Geraldo.
Tomorrow afternoon at 4 on TV 8. Newhart, weeknights at 11:30 on TV 8. Now, Tim Taylor, Robin Swoboda, Casey Coleman on sports, and Dick Goddard with weather. This is Cleveland's own News Center 8.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Here's what's happening. Rescue crews have finally lifted a small plane from the icy waters of Lake Erie off Rattlesnake Island. It crashed off a runway this morning, killing a Willoughby man and injuring 2 others, including a prominent Cleveland businessman.
News Center 8's Sandy Lesko standing by in the newsroom with details of the heroic rescue attempt by Put-in-Bay residents. Sandy?
Well, the crash happened about 150 feet or so off Rattlesnake Island, a small privately owned island of 35 acres near Put-in-Bay. What happened after the distress call came into Pat Chrysler's home on Put-in-Bay is a drama in itself, a testament to the courage of people who live with the reality of an island in the middle of a frozen lake every winter. The dead man has been identified as 39-year-old Frank Krenn of Willoughby. He was allegedly flying the small Cessna as a student pilot, trying to land on Rattlesnake Island, which is owned by one of the injured men who was also on the plane, Smythe Kramer real estate president L.B. McKelvey. The other injured passenger, who is a licensed pilot, has been identified as 24-year-old George Kostikas. The plane slipped off the icy runway around 11 a.m. That's when Pat Chrysler and a team from Put-in-Bay headed to the scene with the only boat that can make it through the ice. What follows is a dramatic account of the rescue. Keep in mind that McKelvey and Kostikas had already made it to shore.
We first saw some garments floating on the surface amongst the ice cakes, and we went to the first object, and it was a jacket, and we went to the next object we saw floating, which was the deceased Mr. Krenn.
Was it that he couldn't swim? Was that the problem?
Yes, that's what we're told, and Mr. McKelvey told me on the scene that he tried to hold him up as long as he could. He just, you know, the water was sapping his strength, and he couldn't hang on to him anymore, and they put him up on the tail of the airplane, and they went in. One of the maintenance men from the island was bringing a kayak out with a line, and in the process of returning back out to get Mr. Krenn, the plane sank.
The photograph you saw and the voice you just heard was that of Pat Chrysler of Put-in-Bay. Now, the airstrip on Rattlesnake Island is often buffeted by winds and the dangerous effect known as wind shear. News Center 8's Dick Russ has still more details of this Lake Erie Island tragedy.
The Cessna 172 was on a training flight out of Burke Lakefront Airport with student pilot Frank Krenn of Willoughby at the controls when the plane hit the water and broke into pieces. Krenn was reported to be a student of another man on board, licensed pilot George Kostikas of Cleveland. They were joined by McKelvey, who employed Krenn as a manager at Smythe Kramer. McKelvey and Kostikas swam to the shore of Rattlesnake Island after the crash, but Krenn was still in the water, which was 37 degrees and 20 feet deep.
Some Put-in-Bay police and fire personnel were able to get into a private boat and get to the scene, and it's our understanding they're the ones that were able to get Mr. Krenn out of the water.
All 3 men were life-flighted to Metro Health Medical Center in Cleveland. Krenn was dead. He had been in the icy water more than an hour. McKelvey and Kostikas were each treated for hypothermia and released from Metro a couple hours later. Investigators want to know exactly what happened when the plane skidded off the island and into the lake.
As to whether or not they were making touch and goes or they were going to make a full stop landing at the island, at this time we don't know.
Now, the Cessna has been salvaged and placed on a barge at Put-in-Bay, where it will be looked at tomorrow by FAA investigators. Robin and Tim?
All right, thank you, Sandy. A car went out of control and plowed into a concrete bridge abutment at the Cedar Bus and Rapid Station tonight. The driver died. Police at the scene speculate the driver may have passed out behind the wheel before the crash. They say it appears the driver never tried to stop. An autopsy will determine the exact cause of death. No one else was hurt.
And visibility was near zero on a fog-shrouded highway near Salt Lake City, Utah, when blinded motorists began plowing into one another. Police say when it was over, at least 2 people were dead in the twisted wreckage of at least 45 vehicles, including a number of big rigs. In all, there were 4 pileups that included several other people, some critically hurt.
Well, all 10 auto emissions testing stations were open for mandatory exhaust analysis in Cuyahoga County today, and at least 2 of the stations, there were long lines and closed bays, resulting in waits of up to an hour for the 3 to 5 minute test.
Tell everybody to bring a full tank of gas and prepare for an hour wait.
How long have you been in line?
About 20 minutes already.
How long do you think you're going to have to wait yet?
Too long. I'm ticked off.
All but one of the testing stations we checked said they were very busy, a situation that hopefully will improve for the 925,000 motorists in Cuyahoga County awaiting their turn in line this year. Most cars have to pass an emissions test before the state will issue a license tag.
Well, it's official. We are in a recession. That fact finally admitted to by President Bush for the first time today, though economists have been saying it for months now. But of all the places to find the economy downturn, Cleveland, according to some, is the best location in the nation, as Newscenter 8's Martin Savage reports.
We're in a slowdown economically in this country, if not recession.
The R word is finally out of the bag, at least from the administration, confirming what economists and economic figures have been saying for some time.
So essentially what you're really seeing is a recession that started in the Southwest, moved to New England, went into the mid-Atlantic states, New Jersey, New York, and then bounced to California. And only now that it's affecting consumer spending is it's working its way into Ohio.
Because of Northeast Ohio's economic base, we may be the last to enter the recession and the first out of it. Despite the dramatic changes in Cleveland's skyline and a trend towards more service-oriented industries, Northeast Ohio is still economically deeply rooted in manufacturing and heavy industry. And for this recession, that's good.
Manufacturing is the core of this economy.
Good news for us, because according to Cleveland State economics professor Ned Hill, the only way out of this recession is to manufacture our way out.
We're going to get our way out by low interest rates. We're going to get our way out by having foreign manufacturers and foreign customers buying manufactured goods and services, which are made in Ohio, and through consumer spending.
So are we building our way out of it?
It's the only way we're going to do it.
To try and spur that, the prime lending rate has been cut by 3 of the nation's top lenders, from 10 to 9.5%. But many experts say it will have to fall a lot farther to have an impact. Meanwhile, locally, one casualty of the recession is Hill's Department Stores, which says it is closing 12 Ohio stores to try and recoup losses of last year. Locally, stores in Parma on Day Drive, Cuyahoga Falls, and 2 in Akron will shut down. Professor Hill says we will likely see other casualties in the form of layoffs in industry locally, but not massive and only short-term. So, the bottom line locally?
It's, again, nowhere close to what the rest of the nation is feeling.
Martin Savage, Newscenter 8, Cleveland.
A banking crisis is in full swing in Rhode Island. 45 banks and credit unions there are closed by order of that state's governor, Bruce Sunland. He declared a bank holiday for the financial institutions after the private insurer of the deposits ran out of money and a subsequent run on banks was feared. Today, depositors of those institutions were wondering and worrying.
Why didn't he wait till Friday until the people got their checks?
A lot of confusion. People wondering, you know, how do I pay my bills? How do I pay my mortgage? If my mortgage is late, do I have to pay the penalties?
In all, 300,000 accounts are frozen, amounting to $1.7 billion. 7 of the 45 institutions will reopen Monday, having been approved for federal insurance. Governor Sunland says he expects no one will lose any money, but he's not about to make any promises.
And still ahead on Newscenter 8, why Iraq may be a lot more anxious to talk Turkey as the countdown to withdrawal is down to 13 days.
And should you know if your own doctor has AIDS? A Cleveland answer coming up.